A lot of people don't realize this, but I want to show you exactly how to be able to tell if your item is a good item or not. When you're looking at a legendary item or even a rare item, you're going to notice that these items have stats. For instance, 17 plus to all stats, plus 4 ranks of tornado, lucky hit chance, plus 3 ranks of pulverize, or mostly for the sake of weapons, this is where this would be important. You can see your weapon secondary stats there, and you're obviously going to try to match the secondary stats to whatever build you're doing. However, it can be difficult to tell whether or not the item is actually a good item because you don't want to waste your upgrades on an item that's a bad item. For instance, if I look at this one, it says 26% basic skill damage, 27 all stats, 50 willpower, 22% damage to close enemies. Maybe I like all those stats, but how do I tell whether or not this item is a high or a low roll? Just like if we look at aspects. For instance, if we look at aspects, we can see it would tell you your percentage of the aspects. When you're struck as a werebear, you have a 20% chance to gain spirit, or earth skills deal 80% more critical strike damage. So before we go to the actual blacksmith and we start upgrading these pieces of equipment, because these are expensive, maybe we want to know if they're good or not. So in order to do that, there is one game setting that is going to change your life. You're going to go to options, you're going to go to gameplay, you're going to turn on advanced tooltip compare and advanced tooltip information. You're going to save this, okay? Now you're going to go back and look at what happens now. Do you see how the numbers show you the roll? You see that bracket underneath it? The way this works is the bracket is showing you what the potential roll the item could have been is. Kitty's in the way here. For instance, look at this. I know this is a max roll to close enemy damage because it says 65.8% is the top roll. It goes 46.2 to 65.8 for that one secondary stat. I know I have a low roll in damage to slow the enemies because it's 49%, but it goes 42 to 65.8. So you can actually see whether you have a high or low roll. I have another low roll on basic skill damage. So I know, even though this is a pretty decent item, it is actually not a completely min-max row, and it will be possible for me to further get upgrades, which is why I have chosen to not enchant this item or upgrade this item in the blacksmith all the way, because the upgrades are actually quite expensive. In order to actually upgrade this item, what I would have to do is I would have to use some of these Forgotten Souls, which are only fairly rare in Helltide, etc. And I actually don't have any of these, even at this stage in the game. So that's one way that you can tell whether these item stats are better or not. What this will also allow you to do now is to go to an item in your inventory and you can hit shift. This will open up the menu to compare, and if you scroll down, it will actually tell you what properties you will lose when you equip. This will help you compare between the item that just dropped, and you can see the percentages in the row of that item, and the item you're already equipped. It will save you a lot of time in min-maxing your gear. But there's another important tip that's arguably even the most important. Items have something called breakpoints. For instance, at 625, there's an item breakpoint. This is an item power of 620. What an item breakpoint will do is it will re-roll your actual stats in its entirety, the rows that you got. For instance, it's a 4.8% cooldown reduction, 3.2 to 6.0, okay? So if I upgrade this, it's going to go to a 6.0. The earth damage will go to a 6.6. It's only gaining 0.1%. The enemy damage reduction is 3.4, etc. That's why if when you're upgrading this, you see sometimes stats might actually go down. You could have had a maxed road item that after you upgrade it to the 625 or 725 breakpoint, it's actually 150, 340, 460, 625, and 725 are all the breakpoints. It will reroll these stats. So if you get a really good item that has really good secondaries and it's at one, about to be at one of the breakpoints, you might actually be able to reroll it from an absolute terrible row to an absolute god tier row, which is why this earth skill damage goes from 6.5, which is kind of in the middle between 4.5 and 8, okay, to 6.6, which is now at the bottom of 5.5 to 11, because it rerolled the earth skill damage if I actually upgrade this. Watch, you see how it rerolled that now? So now, when I upgrade the next time, it goes to 630 total item power, because it'll be another +5 from upgrading, which gives it 0.6 bonus, etc. It's not going to re-roll it unless I was able to get this item power all the way to 725. So just keep in mind, especially when you get to the end game, you might get some items that are like 720 power that you're about to be able to upgrade, and that will give you another opportunity to re-roll all of the secondary stats. Keep in mind, it doesn't change the secondary stats of what ones they are. It just re-rolls them within that bracket. So you can go from maximum to minimum rows or from minimum to maximum rows. Now, I know it's confusing, so I'm going to give you one more example so you can easily see this. here is an item that I have that is a 722 item power. So when I add +5 item power onto it, it will break the 725 breaking point, meaning critical strike damage, ultimate, damage to injuries, and poisoned will reroll. Now, the critical strike damage is 27% out of 30. The ultimate is 24 out of 30. The damage to enemies is 38 out of 50. And the damage to poison enemies is 14 out of a 20 maximum row, okay? So if we put this in there and upgrade this, it will go past the breaking point, which will make it become 36 out of 46, okay? Then we will have 38 out of 46. Then if you look at this here, we would have 50 out of 77, and then a 17.6 out of 30.8. This is best demonstrated with an item that has a max row. For instance, damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned goes to 5 to 10%, okay? So this is a 10%, it is a maximum row. Now, when we upgrade to the next one, it's going to go to 10.9 because it's going to continue the maximum row, and it's going to upgrade it, so we'll upgrade it. Now, when it goes to over 725, it will go to 723 at this point, okay? It's going to continue the max row, so no problem. And now when it goes to over 725 here, you can see that the row goes from being a maximum row to 14.7 out of a 17.8 cap. That is because it actually rewrote the ranks of this item. So just keep in mind, you can lose your maximum rows even if it's an upgrade. That doesn't mean you shouldn't upgrade the item. It just means if you have a bad item that isn't min-maxed for instance, I don't know, let's just say that this was an absolute perfect item at all the stats you want, but it was low rows on every single one of them, but you're like, this is literally perfect. What you could actually do is level it up to its breaking point and then see if it re-rose to a higher of the bracket. It gets even more important to do this when you realize this also shows you the legendary aspect rows. So if you get a legendary drop, you can see the ranges of that legendary aspect's drop potential. For instance, Earth Skills deal 60 to 80%, and this one shows me 80%. So when I get a drop, like this one, let's see, and I see this is a maximum row, what this allows me to do is know I should probably extract that aspect if the aspect is a perfect row and the item I don't like, I will extract that and save it for later. For instance, you see how this one is a 20 to 30%? This is a minimum row. Now, a maximum row would have been better to have saved. The reason that we want to save these is normal legendary aspects can even be imprinted on ancestral items. So for instance, here is a ancestral and here is a sacred. Sacreds can be imprinted on them, so the ones before the tier. Or if I go to a ancestral ring, for instance, here's a sacred ring. I could even put a normal one on it as well. Or I can even extract a normal or sacred legendary item. For instance, that's a perfect row. This is 5 to 10%, with 10% being the higher, it's a perfect row, so I can extract that. And then what I can do is I could then take a ancestral like this, and I could go ahead and put that maximum row on it, and now it has a maximum row even on a two-hand that increases it by 100%. So now it goes up to 20%, which is also the maximum row there. It doesn't just stay at 10%. So for this reason, saving your aspects, both normal as well as sacred, for ancestral, when you get perfect rows, will be quite important to save yourself a headache in the late game. So make sure you turn on those advanced tooltip comparisons, look at your items, see what's better, see what the rows are, and use that in order to improve your overall damage. Consider liking the video or subscribing if you learned something. Subscriptions help me a whole bunch, so I appreciate that. Love you all. Have a great day.